The P4 spigot has opened. Jason Candle and staff are taking UConn recruiting to another level. This is Locked On UConn.
You are Locked On UConn, your daily podcast on the UConn Huskies. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Wednesday and welcome back to another episode of Locked On UConn. I am Matt Schonvisky, a two-time graduate, 10-year credentialed media member, and host of the only daily UConn sports podcast, Locked On UConn. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the number one sports podcast network in the world. Please hit the like and subscribe button, and thank you for making this your first listen each and every single day. On today's show, we will start with football as 11 more players have decided to call UConn home. Then, the aftermath of UConn's win over Seton Hall, what to look for as we turn the page and look ahead to Georgetown this weekend. And finally, the women get set for Thursday's matchup with Villanova. We will look towards that game. But first, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. College football playoff is here, and FanDuel is the best place to get into the action all playoff long. So visit FanDuel.com to get your college football playoff profit boosts every game day. So UConn football is back making news, back making headwaves, and this coaching staff is making an impact in the transfer portal. 11 new guys, like I mentioned, are calling UConn home. And the vast majority have experience at the P4 level. Michigan State, Boston College, Rutgers, Wisconsin, USC out in California, Syracuse, NC State, another Michigan State player. And then you got Fresno State, then you got Ohio University. So for all those that were out there saying, we're recreating the Toledo roster, this is Toledo light, why don't we just go to the MAC? You're seeing players, you're seeing Jason Candle, you're seeing his staff find guys that are going to fit into what they want to do offensively, defensively, and guys that have experience with Power 4 schools and Power 4 football programs. So offensively, let's summarize. You've got Matt Reagan, Boston College transfer, plays tight end. Very prominent. I think he was number 1 or number 2 in the state of Massachusetts, his recruiting class. Went to Boston College, had some injuries, hasn't really seen the field. Kind of reminds me a little bit about a Lou Hansen type in terms of his experience at Michigan, where he had, coming out of high school, very high-profile recruit, went to Michigan, had some injuries, didn't have a chance to see the field, then came to UConn and produced. Wants to make it to the next level in the NFL and is pursuing that currently. So Matt Reagan, opportunity to do the same thing, coming from Boston College. Saw firsthand exactly what UConn football is capable of, going up to Chestnut Hill and beating BC on the road. Emmanuel Ross, wide receiver, Syracuse, has seen some time on the field, has 10 receptions, was only a freshman. Is a guy that can come in and compete for time right off the bat. I think he's got some speed. I think he was a highly rated recruit coming out. Had some options other than Syracuse. So another nice get offensively to help bolster the offense. Another piece. Another Syracuse transfer, Jaden Hart, running back. So you're seeing multiple guys from multiple schools. I talked about Michigan State a few times. We've got 2 Syracuse kids. Jaden Hart, running back. Again, another player that had multiple options, including in the SEC coming out of high school, coming here to UConn. And we need to fill out that running back room. Earlier tonight, I was talking to Michigan State. Locked On Michigan State about Cam Edwards, about Ben Morosky, and what they're going to bring to the table to Michigan State and East Lansing to their football program. We'll post that crossover episode probably later this week, maybe early next week. Give you some insight into the conversation we had in terms of the loss of UConn and what they need to backfill, because they are losses. Let's be honest. The offensive line here at UConn has been a strength, and losing those key pieces, it's a loss. Losing Cam Edwards, the top end of your running back room, it's a loss. So guys like Jaden Hart able to come in and potentially contribute right away. That's what we're looking for. So 3 pieces: tight end, running back, wide receiver on the offensive side of the ball. So Boston College, Syracuse. Let's flip to defense, because I think you're making some splashes here. Avery Dunn, defensive lineman, began his career at Michigan State, transferred to Toledo, now coming to UConn. He's an Ohio kid. The Ohio pipeline is starting to build out itself, right? Especially with Jason Candle and his staff, their experience, their relationships they built with those high schools. The opportunity to go into a football-rich state and start pulling talent. I think that's something we want to look for here going forward. Rennick Dorless, New Jersey kid, Rutgers. Listen, I don't know about you. When I see a player say University of UConn, get him here. I don't know what it is about that, but I just go in and I think they can contribute. I think they're going to be a player, and I think they have an opportunity to come in and compete immediately for a spot in this defensive backfield. Corner, safety, TBD. But pulling a guy from Rutgers, and hey, he's from Newark. UConn was there last night in the win over Seton Hall. To pull in a player from Jersey, speaking of recruiting pipelines, continuing to build up key relationships. Ohio, New Jersey. This can help. Jamel Howard, Wisconsin, defensive line transfer. Steve Miller, defensive back, safety, coming in from Southern Cal. We've had one transfer from Southern Cal in the past, right? DJ Shoemate. Let's hope we don't get a fumble heading in against Michigan. But no, in all honesty, I think getting a guy, a talent, the caliber of Steve Miller to consider UConn and come here to UConn, take a visit, and build that relationship with Coach Candle and the staff, and the opportunity that could be at hand. We just talked about it with Dorless. The opportunities that are going to be here to get on the field very quickly, whether it's corner, whether it's safety. There's open spots across the board. 71 players, if you remember, be either graduation or transfer portal. Lots of opportunities for players to come in and solidify a spot. Another defensive back, Tracy Revels, coming in from Michigan State. From Texas. Played at Michigan State. Coming here to UConn. Great get. So that's 3 pieces potentially in your defensive backfield. Rutgers, Southern Cal, Michigan State. Now we talk further defensive lineman. We talked the other day about a linebacker coming in from NC State. Now we got a defensive lineman. Orizu is the last name. Another defensive lineman, Anis Lugman from Ohio. And then finally, the last addition since the last time we talked, Jaden Davis, defensive back from Fresno State. Another California kid. So you're seeing UConn expand beyond what we've historically seen from a recruiting standpoint. Multiple kids from California, Ohio, New Jersey, North Carolina, Indiana, Georgia. So expanding your footprint, expanding your pipeline of potential options to start building even more of a pipeline from a recruiting standpoint to feed into this revamped UConn football roster and UConn football program that's looking to take another step from what Jim Mora had here, going back-to-back 9-win seasons. So listen, everything I see from a recruiting standpoint, how they're attacking the portal, I like it. I think you're bringing in your top players that you had at Toledo. And Toledo is a team, if we want to look back at how they've historically done against Power 4 competition, they compete. They compete, and they've consistently knocked teams off. Sometimes in blowout fashion, going on the road at Mississippi State and absolutely dismantling the Bulldogs. Just one example. Competing against Kentucky, winning against Kentucky, competing at Notre Dame, almost pulling that one out. It's very rare that Jason Candle would get blown out in games. There were a couple against Miami a few years back. But for the most part, if you go back and look at his performances against Power 4 competition, they're usually either hanging in the game or they usually win in those marquee matchups. It's never a blowout. Took care of BYU multiple times. So when you pull in the top players at Toledo to here to UConn, I don't think you're missing a beat. There's a lot of talent going out the door, no doubt about it. But I think his recruiting classes and the talent that he's been able to bring in, especially from the top end, I think you're seeing it with the offer lists that they've had, the options that they had other than Toledo, and now you're adding to that. Outside of Toledo commits, outside of Toledo transfers, predominantly Power 4 players, and building out this roster with talent. Talent laden, talent rich, players that had options outside of the schools that they're coming from. Some with 35 offers from Power 4 schools. So dare I say, UConn recruiting is taking a step up. And what does that mean as we go forward? I think in the past, if you've been around here, if you've been watching the show, parity in college football is here. And it opens the door for schools like UConn to be able to come in and compete. It opens the door for schools like Indiana. Is losingest a word like winningest? They're not the winningest program in history. They are the program that has lost the most in college football history. Yeah, Indiana today sits number 1 in the nation, blowing everyone out, ready to go and play for a national championship against Miami. This era of college football has created parity, and we're going to talk much more about that as we move forward. As the SEC continues to lick their wounds, third straight year, like I predicted, no national championship. So that wraps it for football on today's episode of Locked On UConn. On the other side of the break, we will look back and, the aftermath of Tuesday's win over Seton Hall. As UConn looks to turn the page from that game, what do we need to see and what do we want to look ahead and see as the Huskies look ahead? The college football playoff is here, and FanDuel is giving all customers even more ways to get in on the action every single game day of the playoffs. Because right now, every college football playoff game day, FanDuel users get a profit boost waiting for them in the app. Here's what I love about it. You get to use the profit boost on bets you already feel good about. Ride with the favorite when you think a team controls the matchup. Or take a shot on the underdog if you feel an upset coming. Or build a parlay around the players and moments you think decide the game. Then you apply the profit boost and go after even bigger winnings. And when you win, FanDuel pays out instantly, which is perfect for playoff football. FanDuel is the best place to get into the action all playoff long. So visit FanDuel.com to get your college football playoff profit boosts every game day. Again, FanDuel.com to get your college football playoff profit boosts every game day. Back in on this Wednesday edition of Locked On UConn, we're switching gears to basketball, the men's side, as UConn last night took care of Seton Hall 69-64. And in the postgame show, we talked a little bit about, and we're going to rehash it here, what we need to see going forward. Because there are some things that are concerning me with this team, despite the 13 wins in a row. Despite the only loss of the year being when 2 of your starters were down to Arizona, who is still undefeated. But there are things that stick out to me that I need to see improvements on. Such as slow starts, such as not as quick to loose balls, such as giving up offensive rebounds, such as lackadaisical effort, such as not going the full 40. And I talked last night, and I've talked before. These situations are perfect for Dan Hurley as a head coach. Because as you look to continue to improve each and every single game, you could just easily look back at each of these games, 5 of the last 6, 6 of the last 7, where there are things you can pull despite 13 straight wins. There are things you can pull that you can easily show your team, hey, let's get that mind right, refocus, reset ourselves, and ensure that we don't repeat the same mistakes each and every single game. And if you look back at the championship runs that this team's had 2 years ago, 3 years ago, similar situations about this time of year. You get to January and things didn't run so smooth. It just so happens this year they are continuing to win while they go through some of these midseason lulls or valleys, which is still on the track upwards. Darren Hurley called Seton Hall a team that will be reckoned with in March after the game last night. Said they don't want to see them until March. They are a team, and their staff will have them in a place that Seton Hall will be competitive at the end of the season. I say yes, but at the same time, I look at UConn's roster and I look at just putting those two teams side by side. UConn's clearly the better team. UConn's clearly the more talented team. And they showcased that for, 30 minutes? Up 18, going away? And they just could not put that nail in the coffin. And this is another thing that Dan Hurley's talked about earlier on in the season, about really putting it to an opponent and making sure that, hey, we put this game completely out of reach. We turn a 15, a 16, a 17-point game into a 23, 24, 25 and officially end it early in the second half. That's what we need to see here going forward. So as we look and move ahead to Georgetown, another game on the road, that's what I'm looking for. That killer instinct, that killer mindset, that take no prisoner attitude that you need to have, especially when you get to tournament time in one-and-done situations. Just on a crossover episode with Michigan State, talking about some football players that are leaving UConn and going to East Lansing. But we also touched a little about basketball and the historical matchups we've had with Michigan State in the past. And I just reinforced the fact that, hey, we talked about this, in a tournament environment, a one-and-done situation opens the door, especially if you open the door for opponents, to come in. And the way the craziness of NCAA March Madness is, it opens the door for upsets. It opens the door for flukes. It opens the door for, if you give somebody a chance, they will take it, especially in the first weekend of the tournament. So as we go through here, looking ahead to Georgetown, cleaning things up, get on the offensive glass. Don't give up 20 offensive rebounds like you did last night. Don't turn the ball over as much as you did last night. I think there was 13. Hit your free throws. Terrace Reed missed 8. Hit some outside shots. Get some consistency. And if it's not falling, continue to utilize down low. Get to the basket. Get to the free throw line. Which they did. Which is why they came out on top. Continue to focus defensively. And then when it's time to put a game away, lock in and get it done. So as we move ahead to Georgetown, that's what I'm looking for, at least on my side. So that's all we got today on men's basketball. On the other side of the break, we will flip it to women's basketball as they're back in action on Thursday, hosting Villanova. We'll talk about that after the break. Back in for our final segment on today's episode of Locked On UConn, and switching gears to the women's side as UConn is back in action Thursday night as they host Villanova. Similar to the men, who took on the second-ranked Big East team on Tuesday, the women do that on Thursday as Villanova comes in 7-1 in conference play, 14-3 overall. But their losses aren't big-time losses. Their losses come to the likes of Fairfield, Princeton, and Marquette, who UConn absolutely dismantled earlier this season. So as I look at what I expect on Thursday, Heading into Creighton, it was, 40 or 50-point win. Let's call it 35 plus for Thursday night. Villanova has won quite a bit of games. But the quality of opponent is not there. They have not played a ranked team other than West Virginia, who they played on the road and actually won by 22. But that's the only ranked team they played. So they've won 12 of their last 13. Only loss coming on the road to Marquette. But I think UConn set up to, just like they have for every other game, to roll, to dominate. And unlike what we talked about on the men's side, will put a team away. But it is, from a matchup standpoint, UConn-Villanova, history there, right? From a win standpoint, Villanova has 14 wins to 14-3, like I said, 7-1 in the conference. So it's an interesting matchup. It's as interesting a matchup as you can get in this conference. Will UConn be challenged? I don't think so. Remains to be seen. Maybe I'm wrong. But I'm looking for at least a 35-point win on Thursday night. And who's going to perform? It's going to be the same that we've seen it here over the last 4 weeks. Call it. Sarah Strong, Easy Fudd, Blanca. Those three are going to be your leaders from a scoring standpoint. And I'm looking for shutdown defensively. I'm looking to hold Villanova to under 60. If you do that, I think UConn has an opportunity to score 90 plus. I think you're going to get that 35 plus point win. So women back in action on Thursday. We will recap on Friday's show. And as mentioned, we will be looking to try to get some hockey talk here ahead of the weekend. So as we do so, that will wrap it up for today's show here on Locked On UConn. We talked football, we talked men's basketball, we talked women's basketball. As we go forward, we will continue to stay close on the football side. I think we're going to start to see a bit slower transfer portal news / recruiting news in terms of commits. I think we're through the brunt of it. I think the last push, these last 11 players, were what we're going to see here for the foreseeable future. You might get a few 1 or 2 piece additions here over the next couple of weeks. But I think that things are going to start to slow down from transfer portal news here with UconnFootball. Then we talk to UConn basketball, coming off the win over Seton Hall on the men's side. And then women's preview. So with that, thank you for tuning in to today's episode of Locked On UConn. Please hit the like and subscribe button. And for a second listen, check out Locked On Sports Today, hosted by Peter Bukowski, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. And as always, go Huskies!